Greetings, friends. I am Vitaly Potnikov, one of the leaders of the Tajik opposition in exile, the head of the movement for reforms and development of Tajikistan. Sharofiddin Gadoev visited Afghanistan officially at the invitation of one of the non-governmental organizations of this country. Although we all perfectly understand that under modern conditions, Afghan civil society can operate and, moreover, invite opposition politicians from Central Asian countries, only in coordination with the central authority, with the power of the Taliban movement. Thus, the very fact of the appearance in Kabul of one of the leaders of the Tajik emigration, and with harsh criticism of the president of Tajikistan, Emomali Rahmon, and his regime, indicates that the attitude towards the leadership issue of Tajikistan in Kabul remains, to put it mildly, hostile, and that in the Afghan capital they continue to seek ways to pressure the leadership of the neighboring country and establish contacts with those who, to put it mildly, do not have the most positive attitude towards the current president of Tajikistan and his regime. As is known, Emomali Rahmon, among all other leaders of Central Asian countries, has taken the most uncompromising stance towards the Taliban movement and the establishment of its own authority in the Afghan capital. There is nothing surprising here if we recall the political history of Tajikistan itself. As is known, Emomali Rahmon came to power in this Horn country as a result of a bloody civil war. One of the steps towards normalizing the situation in Tajikistan was the National Reconciliation Program, the interaction of the forces that came to power with the defeated, with democratic and Islamist political organizations and their leaders, many of whom soon returned to Tajikistan only to become victims of political repression years later and witnesses to the formation of a regime that, in essence, is no different from the regimes of neighboring countries and is a family and corporate type of power. A power that, of course, does not leave even a hint of any pluralism for Tajik society, which you must agree is strange for a country that has experienced a civil war. And in this situation, of course, any strengthening of Islamist forces, which serves as a natural reminder of the outcomes of the civil war in Tajikistan and the possibility of new destabilization, cannot help but irritate Emomali Rahmon. That's why he has taken such a tough stance towards the Taliban, despite the fact that Tajikistan's Russian partners have been much more conciliatory about the events since almost the first days after the change of power in Kabul, perhaps because they considered the ousted Afghan leadership primarily an American creation. Despite the fact that the Taliban was recognized as an extremist organization in the Russian Federation, Moscow began establishing relations with the new authorities literally from the first days and weeks after the Taliban consolidated power in Kabul. And recently, as is known, even more significant events have occurred. In Russia, they have finally stopped considering the Taliban as an extremist organization, and the Taliban government in Kabul decided to appoint its own head of the diplomatic mission in Moscow. So it can be said that there are practically no partners for Emomali Rahmon in perceiving the Taliban as a threat to national interests for Tajikistan and the entire region. And of course, in this situation, it is not surprising that the Taliban is becoming more active and is closely observing what will happen in Tajikistan. The country is preparing for the successor operation, although it is completely unclear whether the replacement of Rahmon's father with his son will occur during the lifetime of the current Tajik president, or whether Emomali Rahmon will try to create the necessary tools for his son to become the country's president after his departure, either from the political arena or physically, as happened, by the way, in Azerbaijan, where the longtime president of that country, Heydar Aliyev, was succeeded by his son Ilham, who continues to lead the country to this day. However, it may turn out that Tajikistan is by no means Azerbaijan, and that the entire stability of the regime was based precisely on the capabilities of the head of state and the consolidation of power by his son, specifically Emomali Rahmon, and that any new Tajik president, whether the son of the current head of state or a representative of the ruling circles, simply will not be able to count on the loyalty of society or the loyalty of the security forces, which in fact have ensured the stability of power in Tajikistan for all these decades. And then, of course, a real opportunity arises for the Tajik opposition. And then there's also an opportunity for the Taliban movement to assist this opposition so that it can rely not only on the part of Tajik society that desires change, but also on substantial external support that could ensure this drive for change. Therefore, the very fact of a visit by one of the Tajik opposition members to the Afghan capital should not be viewed as a marginal event or merely a conversation between representatives of the civil societies of Tajikistan and Afghanistan. This is, above all, groundwork for the future. First and foremost, it involves reflections on what will happen to Tajikistan after Emomali Rahmon, and whether it will be possible to stabilize the regime after the departure of a person who, for decades, primarily focused on preserving all political, civil, and media mechanisms in Tajikistan, leaving space only for his own family and supporters, and offering others to buy tickets for the nearest flights to Russian cities and work as migrant laborers without any hope for a normal and decent life in their own country. For a while, of course, this could have been satisfactory for both Emomali Rahmon and Vladimir Putin. However, it is unclear how long such a scheme will continue to work, especially if the Kremlin's relations with the Taliban strengthen due to Russia's obvious desire to establish ties with anyone willing to oppose Washington. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, follow my social media and the channels on Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee and Donatello, which help develop these resources. Use the sponsorship feature on YouTube itself. Peace to you.